The sight of enemy campfires burning within view of their city was a profound humiliation for the Spartans. During these campaigns, Epaminondas championed the cause of the Helots, the subjugated serf population upon which Spartan society was built. He liberated Messenia, a region that had been enslaved by Sparta for hundreds of years. He founded the new city of Messene on the slopes of Mount Ithom, giving the freed Helots a fortified capital and a symbol of their newfound independence. This act was a strategic masterstroke, permanently crippling Sparta by depriving it of a huge portion of its agricultural land and labor force. The sacred band continued to serve as the elite fighting force of the Theban army, their reputation burnished by the glory of Leuctra. Pelopidas led them on further campaigns, extending Theban influence into Thessaly. His life, however, was cut short in the Battle of Cynocephalae, where he died defeating Alexander of Pherae. The loss of Pelopidas was a severe blow to Thebes, but the strategic genius of Epaminondas remained. Thebes' dominance, however, rested heavily on the shoulders of this single, exceptional man. The other Greek states, including Athens and the newly confident Arcadians, grew wary of Theban power. They formed new alliances to create a counterbalance against this new hegemon. The complex web of Greek politics was rewoven into a new pattern of shifting loyalties. The final act of this drama would play out 9 years after Leuctra, at the Battle of Mantinea. Once again, Epaminondas faced a coalition of Spartans, Athenians, and others determined to halt his ambitions. He employed tactics even more complex than those used at Leuctra, once again achieving a tactical victory. But in the moment of triumph, as he fought on the front lines, Epaminondas was struck down by a spear. His dying words were a question. Was his shield safe? Assured that it was, and told that his army was victorious, he allowed the spearhead to be withdrawn from his chest, dying peacefully. With his death, Theban power collapsed. There was no one of his caliber to succeed him. Thebes' brief but brilliant hegemony came to an end. Greece descended into a state of renewed stalemate and chaos, with no single city-state able to assert lasting dominance. This power vacuum would ultimately be filled by a new force from the north, Macedon under King Philip II of Tark. Philip had spent part of his youth as a hostage in Thebes, where he had carefully studied the tactics and strategies of Epaminondas. The lessons he learned there, born on the battlefield of Leuctra, would be instrumental in his own military reforms. He would create the Macedonian phalanx, a professional fighting force that would conquer all of Greece. And his son, Alexander, would take that army and forge an empire that stretched to the borders of India. Thus, the legacy of Leuctra was profound and far-reaching. It directly led to the fall of Sparta and the brief rise of Thebes. More importantly, its tactical innovations, passed through Philip to Alexander, reshaped the art of war. Courage of the Theban soldiers on that day was remarkable. They faced an enemy with a fearsome and well-deserved reputation. Their trust in their general's radical plan was absolute. The Spartan hoplites, for their part, fought with their customary bravery. They were simply overcome by a superior strategy and a concentration of force they could not counter. The psychological impact on the survivors was immense. They returned to Sparta not as heroes, but as the bearers of catastrophic news. The social structure of Sparta, already strained by declining citizen numbers, was pushed to the breaking point. The defeat exposed the weaknesses of a system that was too rigid and resistant to change. Thebes' victory was a testament to the power of new ideas. It showed that even the most entrenched traditions could be overthrown. The battle is a classic example of asymmetrical warfare, where a smaller force uses unconventional tactics to defeat a larger, more conventional one. The oblique battle order was a masterpiece of battlefield geometry. It allowed Epaminondas to concentrate his strength where it mattered most, while minimizing his risk elsewhere. The role of the cavalry was also crucial, demonstrating the importance of combined arms in achieving a decisive result. The sacred band's performance cemented their place in history as one of the most effective elite units of the ancient world. Their sacrifice and dedication were an inspiration to their fellow citizens. The political maneuvering before the battle was as important as the fighting itself. Epaminondas's defiance at the peace conference was a calculated risk that paid off handsomely. He successfully framed the conflict as a struggle for Boeotian freedom against Spartan tyranny. This narrative helped to unify his own forces and galvanize their will to fight. The Spartan leadership, in contrast, displayed a fatal lack of imagination. They relied on the same tactics that had worked for centuries, unable to conceive that an opponent might try something radically different. Cleombrotus's decision to place himself in the front ranks of the right wing was standard practice, but it made him a high-value target. His death was the turning point of the battle, the moment when Spartan discipline finally broke. The aftermath of the battle was a period of intense political and military activity. Epaminondas's campaigns in the Peloponnese were a whirlwind of strategic brilliance. He understood that defeating Sparta on the battlefield was not enough. He had to dismantle the very foundations of its power. The liberation of Messenia was his most enduring achievement. It was a blow from which Sparta never truly recovered. The creation of the Arcadian League was another significant development, fostering a new sense of regional identity and cooperation. Thebes' failure to create a lasting empire highlights the inherent instability of the Greek city-state system. Hegemony was often dependent on the brilliance of a few key individuals. Without a strong institutional framework to sustain it, power could be fleeting. The Battle of Mantinea, while a tactical victory for Thebes, was a strategic disaster because of the loss of Epaminondas. It underscored the fragility of their dominance. The story of Leuctra is ultimately a story of innovation, courage, and the dramatic rise and fall of empires. It is a pivotal moment in Greek history, a turning point that closed one chapter and opened another. The shadows of the long spears at Leuctra would stretch far into the future, shaping the destiny of nations yet to come. The dust settled on the plain, but the world had been changed forever. Thebes had its moment of glory, a brief, shining period of preeminence. Sparta began its long, slow decline into obscurity. And in the north, a young Macedonian prince was learning the lessons that would enable him to conquer the world. The battle was a brutal affair, a close-quarters struggle of pushing and stabbing. The sound of thousands of men shouting, of bronze striking bronze, would have been deafening. The Theban 50-deep formation was not just a tactic, it was a psychological weapon. The sight of this massive, seemingly endless column of men advancing must have been terrifying. The Spartans were trained to hold their ground, but even their legendary discipline had its limits. The pressure from the rear of the Theban formation was immense, ensuring that the front ranks could not retreat. Each man in the column was literally pushing the man in front of him forward. This created a grinding, irresistible force that simply wore down the thinner Spartan line. The role of Pelopidas in the sacred band was critical in spearheading the attack. They were the point of the lance, tasked with breaking the enemy's initial resistance. Their success inspired the men behind them to surge forward with even greater determination. The defeat was particularly galling for the Spartans because it was their first major land defeat in centuries. It struck at the very core of their identity and their sense of superiority. The loss of so many full citizens in a single battle was a demographic catastrophe. The Spartiate population was already dwindling, and Leuctra accelerated this decline precipitously. The battle also had a significant impact on the morale of Sparta's allies. They had followed the Spartans out of a mixture of fear and respect. With Sparta's prestige shattered, their loyalty began to waver. Epaminondas was not just a great general. He was also a skilled politician and diplomat. He was able to translate his military victory into lasting political change. His vision for a free Messenia and a united Arcadia demonstrated a strategic foresight that went beyond the battlefield. The Theban hegemony was a product of his genius, and it could not survive without him. The battle serves as a timeless lesson in the importance of adaptability in warfare. Spartans were a victim of their own success, their tactics having become stagnant and predictable. Epaminondas, by thinking creatively, was able to exploit this weakness with devastating effect. The legacy of Leuctra is a testament to the idea that no power is invincible and that history is full of surprising turns. The Theban victory was a moment of profound change, a day when the old order was swept away and a new one was born. The world after Leuctra was a more complex and uncertain place, setting the stage for the rise of Macedon and the end of the classical era of the Greek city-state.